I'm going to hand it over to our wonderful Anna and her member tip. Um,
Thank you very much. Wonderful, Kimberly. You did great. All right. Welcome to Tip Corner with Anna. I have got a main tip for you and a little freebie tip. The freebie tip that I wanted to tell you about, I was very excited to bring to you because I just kind of figured out myself. Um, and I've been knitting for a while, so sometimes when I find something new, I get really excited about it. I'm always finding new things. But the thing I wanted to show you, and this is the freebie because it's going to be really quick, is that there are different points that you can get on tapestry needles. So this is my trusty clover, and it's a pretty blunt tip. And I just discovered that Tulip makes these tapestry needles that come with a fairly pointed tip. Now, I like to use the blunt tip when I'm grafting or weaving in ends, or no, not weaving in ends, but like mattress stitching or seaming like that. But then I like to be really take my pointy tip ones and I'll use these to weave in the ends. So usually you don't want to split the yarn. That's why you use the blunt tip. But when you do want to split the yarn, like hiding the end when you're weaving something in the back, this will keep the yarn in the back, the pointy tip. So I really like to use the pointy tip for weaving in ends and then the blunt tip for absolutely everything else. And it has kind of changed the way that I weave in ends to be able to use that pointy tip instead of the blunt one, because I always had problems with the yarn coming to the front of the work. All right, so that was the freebie tip. And now I'm going to talk about ladders. So not this kind of ladder, but sometimes when we're knitting, we will find that there might be an obstruction, like maybe a stitch marker or double pointed needles or knitting to cables, where the running yarn, that's the yarn that goes in between two stitches here, is longer than it should be. So you end up with something that looks like a gap between your stitches like this. And this can happen for a bunch of different reasons. I'm not going to troubleshoot all the ways that you can do this. I'm just going to show you one super quick way that I like to deal with a ladder if I see it showing up. So you can get ladders. Here is a very common place when you're switching from double pointed needle to double pointed needle. So if it's practical to go to circulars, you could eliminate the problem that way. You can also find the ladder sometimes when you go from a knit to a purl. And you can use this trick that I'm going to show you to work with that. Anyway, so here I am at the point where I would probably get a ladder if I wasn't paying attention or hadn't been practicing. So if the problem is I have too much yarn between my stitches, I want to have a little bit less yarn between my stitches. So I'm going to enter the stitch as if to knit. Now, if this was a regular stitch, I would wrap my yarn clockwise around the needle. And you can see how much yarn that stitch uses. But since I'm going to do my nifty get rid of ladders trick, instead of going counterclockwise like I usually would, I'm going to go cheat and go clockwise. So you can see right there how much less yarn I'm using to make that stitch. It's going to pull it tight. And the other thing it's going to do as I knit it is it's going to seat the stitch on the needle backwards, or the way that I'm not used to doing it. So usually the right leg is in front, like we talked about. That's our Western style knitting. But to do it the other way, the other if you knit in the back, if you knit, clockwise like this, you twist your stitch. So the thing that I do, I've used yet less yarn to make the stitch, but then all I have to do to correct that is when I come to that stitch, that first stitch is going to be seated like this. All I have to do is knit into the back, and then it's going to be right side. So I've used less yarn to make the stitch, and you can even tell as it sits on the needle here that it is a little bit tighter than all my other needles, and that's hopefully going to take care of that ladder right here. And you can definitely try it in other places to help get rid of that ladder. So I'll show you just one more time. So a usual stitch, I'm going in to make a knit stitch. A usual stitch, I go around the long way, so around the back. And to do the shorter way, I come in the front. and that makes my stitch use less yarn. So there's not going to be so much space between my two stitches. And then when you come around, you just have to knit into the back so it knits straight. All right, so that's one way to deal with ladders. Next month, we're going to talk about books. So my question to you is, what books should books, I don't know how many people are going to write in, should knitters know about? So you can email info@puddletownknittersguild.com and I will see it. And then I have another question for you is, would you like to request a specific tip? Is there something that you would like me to cover sometime? I do a lot of researching, so if I don't know the answer, which I probably won't, I go to my books and I would try to find the answer for you. So anyway, here's the email. There's next month's tip, and there's an open question for you.